Well, it's the spring season of anime once again, so time for another round of shows that are mostly crap, but who knows? Maybe there'll be one or two gems amongst the junk. So let's start off with RDG Red Data Girl, and what better way to start than with this load of crap. Credit where it's due, the animation was pretty at times, some of the panoramic shots were cool, and the water sensation halfway through was also excellently done. But the odd, ooh, pretty, doesn't make up for the rest of it. As the opening starts, you agree to a little screen explaining what red data is, and I hope you read that, because it's all the fucking explanation you're getting. The first episode of a show shouldn't leave you with no fucking clue about anything whatsoever, but this managed it. There's the main girl, who's withdrawn and shy and has no positive traits or interest whatsoever, but guess what? She's special! For some reason. It's not explained at all, other than people who are in on it worship her and will change the lives of others to suit her every need and whim. And there's your problem. It's the generic You're Important show, which appears to want to have some lovey-dovey stuff running in the background. But it never gives you any reason whatsoever to want to continue watching. So I won't. Dropped. Next. It's Otona Joshi no Anime Time 2. And this one is kinda tricky to judge. The premise, from what little I read up on this season, was that it's several different stories based off real-life tales of women. Either way, that setup makes for one of the weirdest things I've seen. Not in an FLCL or Kyosa Giga way. More, this feels like daytime TV. Which makes it all more perplexing why it was mildly enjoyable. The story was interesting enough, if a little bland and ordinary, as you probably expect. The leading lady was overly emotional and seemed really happy with her life, even though all we saw was her cooking. But it still felt sweet. Musical choices were top notch, the blend of animation and real life shots worked well, animation itself isn't going to win any awards, but the simplistic style suited it well enough. This isn't a must watch show, and if you're after epic battles or intricate plots, this won't be your thing. But if you want to relax to something or enjoy a compact one episode narrative based in reality and not fantasy, you won't go far wrong with this. Plus, all 3 episodes of this season are already out, so you don't have to wait to watch it all. Next up, Data A Live. Well, unlike RDG, which I managed to wait out for a TV quality release, I chose to view Data A Live in glorious web resolution, and oh god, my eyes, they're bleeding. Anyway, this show. Oh dear. Our bland, generic protagonist has to save the world from spacequakes by romancing the spirits causing them. More genericness? Well, there's his tsundere younger sister who expects him to dote on her hand and foot, and is also the commander of this special division to deal with spacequakes, despite being 14 years old. There's the totally not gay best friend, the super genius love interest, the over-panicking teacher whose voice actor sounded way too young for the role, and yeah, the characters were fucking dumb. In fact, that was my impression of the entire show. This is dumb. All my hope at the beginning when it talked about 150 million people dying was eradicated by Oni-chan in that sickening voice, and it all went downhill. I imagine this would be like watching The World God Only Knows, except with it taking itself super seriously. Dumb, dumb, dumb. No way in hell I'm watching this. Karneval. Going into this, I was expecting a more bland affair, so suffice to say this exceeded those expectations. A kid whose best friend has, I assume, died, but probably not, it's an anime, is rescued from his prison-esque life, and by the look of it, this will follow the journey of him and his rescuer. Also, his bracelet the probably not dead friend gave him is really important for some reason. Okay, the show didn't really state much of the overall plot here, other than here's some bad guys, here's some good guys, all change side depending on what's happening, here's our leading good guys, and they'll probably interact a bunch. The animation and music weren't special either, although the ending song stuck in my head. So, why did I enjoy this? Maybe it's the characters, all their little quirks and intrigues. The lead kid seemed to have super hearing, there's a magician-esque guy who uses illusions and creates stuff at will. But more interestingly, there's the rescuer from before who doesn't appear to have any particular power other than not being a dumbass. Which is always good. It seems to have potential for an interesting plot, the ending was a neat, if mildly predictable turn of events, and the transformation of a lady to a hideous monster at the start gives me hope for more horrors of that vein in this world. Who knows, but this is one I'll be keeping up with in my spare time, most likely. Dansai Bunri no Crime Edge. Maybe it's because of Cuticle Detective Inaba last season, but with another show about haircutting and crime in the title, I was assuming it would be similar. But no, this show is taking itself far more seriously, and as such, fails completely to be memorable. Ollie, who has a fetish for hair and the cutting thereof, meets a girl whose hair cannot be cut. Dun dun dun. Apparently, she's cursed as well for some reason, but through arbitrary bullshit he finds out the scissors he carries around are also cursed and cuts her hair, helping her live life anew. And that's the plot, neatly done in one episode. Wait, no, it's a series. Shit, quick, drag it out by having more cursed things or killing tools and making their wielders fight. That's what I assume based off the final 30 seconds or so anyway. It really did seem that they forgot this was a 13 episode season. Still, they set up some characters who might have personality, hard to tell off the 1 minute they had. Animation was mediocre, some of the plot was dumb and not in an intentional comedic way like Cuticle Detective, so one for the unlikely pile. Photo Kano, a series about photography. This would be right up my mother's alley. Well, if it didn't fall foul of the anime thing of chucking in fan service for little point whatsoever. Luckily, it very quickly seemed to set out who the perverts were, so you could just turn off whenever they were speaking, for which I'm thankful. Anyway, the show. A slice of life about a guy who's just discovered the joys of photography. Okay, the plot was very flimsy based off this first episode, but the characters made up for it, most showcasing personality and standing out, even in the short screen time some got. The lead, while a bit bland, wasn't a moron, and the show did seem to have a genuine love of its subject. Animation was alright, although the stylized photographs were a nice touch, but the animation for the opening was weird. When it wasn't random fan service, it felt just like clips of the series thrown together, which for an anime feels really off. I have this down as unlikely, as logic tells me this won't arise above some generic slice of life show, but I'll be listening to see if it picks up at all, because the potential was there. Hataraku Maou-sama. Oh joys, another generic demon versus human shonen. At least Maou-Yusha last season, can't pronounce that, tried to do something different. Such was my mentality at the first few minutes of this show. Then he leapt through the portal and nope, you had it all wrong, Slazer. The actual plot is that Satan and one of his generals end up in our current world and must now try to get back to their old world. But because of the lack of magic here, they have to take human forms. And to survive they need food, shelter, and so forth. It made for an entertaining first half of the show as they tried to communicate with the police, learn the language, which they seemed to pull off stupidly quickly, and get jobs. Second half time skipped when he had a job and began showcasing their two lives in earnest, which, well, not quite as good, still its highlights. So yeah, in case it isn't obvious, I like the characters and premise of this. Adding the neat, if done before ending, and you got a show which, well, not a must-see, showed a lot more promise than most. And based off how we're doing thus far, that probably means I'll be watching this. Yahari Ori no Seishun Love Comedy wa Machigaitaru, my teenage rom-com SNAFU. Because the SNAFU is important, hence why it's in all caps. I must admit, seeing love comedy in the title set off alarm bells, but it wasn't anywhere near as bad as I feared. Hell, I'd go as far as saying the characters were alright. While neither lead was deep or had an amazing backstory, their outlooks on life, one hating most people, especially girls, because of his rejections, and the other believing everyone should always be brilliant at anything they do or else they're failures, which reminds me of me in a way. Their interactions were what made the show. Which is handy, as I assume that's what this show's relying on. I mean, these two, plus the other chick who, I assume is like an Osakan because of her, accent, And then no doubt some terrible, be it on purpose or not, love plot in the background while all they do is insult each other non-stop. The plot and animation were mediocre to the extreme, and it's hard to judge how the show would last based off just the character interactions. So this gets an unlikely for me, but hey, if you got a kick out of it, probably won't suck. Ginga Kikoutai, Majestic Prince. Oh boy, it's space pew pew time. As a bunch of kids pilot mechs against the generic enemy fleet. Stop me if you've heard that one before. In some ways, this show seemed like it wanted to be an EVA, with the mechs reacting based on the feelings of the pilot. If they want to fight, they will. If they don't, they won't. Adding some cliche, I'ma be a hero stuff, and you've got a cliche mecha show. But in space. To be fair, the battles were nicely animated, with a splash of CG to help out. Sadly, this came with a price elsewhere, notably our lead group's faces all seem to have been scribbled in a matter of seconds, like they were an afterthought to the mechs in space part. Their personalities didn't appear to take much longer to make either, most of them bland and boring to behold. They also apparently sucked, which made it all the more perplexing why they were told to defend a space base instead of, I don't know, the team who kicked their ass in the first few minutes of the show? Weird. To summarise, a show with potential, but unlikely to realise it. Need a mech or space fix? This might satisfy you, but I doubt it. Not terror bad enough to be instantly dropped, but it's unlikely I'll find the time or energy to care about this going forward. Utter no Prince-sama, Maji love 2000%. Bishies everywhere. I've not seen the original 1000% series, and based off this I doubt I will. A fairly generic male harem show with lots of guys who define style over substance. The songs were alright, and it certainly looked the part, with personalities as deep as a puddle and a plot that I'm guessing will be, this week X guy accidentally or deliberately woos the lady. Speaking of her, she was dull as ditchwater too, but my god, those eyes! Those fucking eyes! She looked lifeless. At least this episode didn't waste all its time recapping the first season, instead offering more of a refresher to the characters and roughly pointing out what the season will be about, as they go from professional singers to more professional singers. Generic, bland, run-of-the-mill. If you liked the first season, you'll probably like this, and if you've never seen it before, there's better shows to catch up with. Another unlikely. Devil Survivor 2, the animation. Wait, are those people watching and deriving enjoyment from watching clips of people they know dying? Wow, that's messed up. But damn, it makes for an interesting story. Our leads, having foreseen their deaths but being too dumb to get away from them, are killed before being saved by an app which gives them demon summoning powers, which they'll soon need in this new world where Japan is under attack by more demons. The first episode was well paced, with the characters' friendly exchanges instantly making them likeable, and they seem like they'll have plenty of room to evolve over the course of the show. Animation looks pretty good too, with some of the fights and effects looking swish, but that could be because it's the first episode. Time will tell there. In fact, my only real main worry is that this could devolve into cliché shown in Battle of the Week. I doubt it, but having not played the game this is based off, couldn't say for sure. Well, I'll find out soon enough, as this is the first series that successfully drew me into its world and made me crave more from this season. So yeah, you bet I'm keeping on to it. Hyakka, Ryouran Samurai Blade. Another sequel, and I can see why. This looks like exactly the kind of show the idiotic masses of Chushan could get behind, much like Senran Kagura last season. But instead of ninjas for perverts low, it's samurai for perverts. Original. Hell, at some point it's abandoned fan service and just went for straight up nudity, so I guess at least it knows who it's aimed at. Then again, the show does actually talk about how Moe sounds, so it's almost like the creators are begrudgingly doing this shite because it'll make them more money. Either way, I do have to give some credit to the animation, or more specifically its use of colours at times. The monochrome world stuff was especially neat to look at. And for a sequel, it didn't waste much time recapping, more refreshing and then showcasing what this season's plot would be, like 2000% earlier. Wait, I'm praising this too much. At the end of the day, if you get off to this shit, or like the first season, you'll watch it and enjoy it. If you're a rational human being who doesn't want your characters and plot to be an excuse for erotica, you'll think it's pretty crap. I fell into the latter, so unsurprisingly, I'll be dropping this. And last but not least for this first part, Aku no Hana. Well, this one episode analysis is gonna be hard. Aku no Hana, or Flower of Evil, was one of the 3 big shows I was hyped up for this season, along with Titan and Railgun, but this was something else. It feels like an art house project in many ways. It is, by far, the most stylistic show of this season, and I say that now even though I'm only a third of the way through the show's airing. Hell, it's one of the most stylistic shows I've ever seen. Even letting the animation lacking opening and haunting yet mesmerising ending song slide, you had the show itself. Characters look a lot more human, with actual noses and eyes that don't consume their faces. The animation style itself is imperfect, but it works. Visually, this show will stick in your mind. But you probably noticed I didn't mention the plot, or premise, or characters. That's because, well, I couldn't tell you about them. There's our lead who likes books and has a crush and lives an incredibly ordinary life, and his friends who also live incredibly ordinary lives. There's no comedy, and the only highlight comes from when one of the students who think she's above the system or something calls the teacher a piece of shit. But surely a show with the first episode that benign has something up its sleeve. There were hints that something was going to happen with the flower slowly waking, but no end result after this episode, which is the weirdest thing. There was no hook here, no reason to continue watching. It was just the kid living his life, no comedy, no gimmick, nothing. Under my old system, because I chose this show before the season, I'd stick with it. Under my current system, which I'm using here, it fails the 1 episode test, and I drop it. My mind says drop, but my heart says keep, and my gut feelings don't usually let me down, so here's hoping sticking with this proves rewarding. Well, that's all for this first batch, but coming up next time we have a show that could be good in Gargantia, a show that should be good in Titan, and a show that, oh god, abort!